The U.S. imposed sanctions on 2 Israeli outposts and 3 settlers it accused of undermining stability in the occupied West Bank. Joe Biden's administration also appealed to Israel to do more to prevent settler violence that Washington says is an obstacle to Israeli-Palestinian peace. And for more on this, we're now joined by SABC News correspondent Alex Cardier. Alex, a very good evening to you once again. Look, talk to us about these latest developments that the U.S. is imposing sanctions on Israeli settlers on Palestinian territory. How will these work, actually?
Well, these will be financial asset freezes imposed by the United States, and also will ban all U.S. companies from engaging in any business activities with these sanctioned individuals and sanctioned entities. And that is the crucial piece. This is the first time the United States has sanctions entire outposts. The 2 outposts in question are Moshe's farm and Zvi's farm, and the 2 owners of those outposts have also been sanctioned. U.S. officials saying that they engaged in repeated violence against Palestinians, as well as repeatedly attempted to engage in further violence with Palestinians. They also prevented Palestinian farmers from accessing their own lands, and were seen as committing quite a number of acts of violence in the West Bank. And certainly those settlements considered illegal under international law. The actions of those settlers also considered illegal under international law, and so the U.S. Taking actions with those sanctions. Now, it is significant that outposts are being sanctioned as a whole. It would mean that any entity in any way linked to the support or the encouragement or in any way supportive of these outposts would also face legal penalties from the United States. So it really is a ramping up of the pressure of by the United States on these illegal settlements, on these settlers and their violence against Palestinians, and sending a clear message from Washington to the Israeli government that they have to do more to stop these violent settlers.
And speaking of pressure, Alex, do you get a sense that there is an element of local politics in play here as well? I mean, so much pressure, of course, coming from the various organizations and countries. So as an international community, so that the international community rather can see the U.S. doing something, especially ahead of the ICJ ruling.
Yeah, certainly, and I think it's important to say that the situation, the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and the military actions by Israel in the last few weeks, and certainly in the last few months since South Africa's petition to the International Court of Justice was first put those many months ago, those actions, that humanitarian situation, will all be looked at by international courts, particularly by the International Court of Justice at the request of South Africa, of course, and that will be something that features very prominently as part of a broader, you're quite right to put it that way, a broader scale of international pressure. And it's not it's also Israel's closest allies. We've heard President Biden saying that an operation in Rafah, which we now know Prime Minister Netanyahu has approved, would be a red line. We've heard Germany, Annalena Baerbock, the foreign minister there, saying an operation in Rafah would be a humanitarian catastrophe. We've seen the UK also urging against any further military operation in Rafah because of the huge risk to civilians there. That is the kind of pressure that is being put on Israel, and particularly on Prime Minister Netanyahu, who has been singled out by very high-profile US politicians for criticism. Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, the most senior elected Jewish official in the US government, saying that Prime Minister Netanyahu is an obstacle for peace. That pressure is building. So too are the hopes, perhaps, of progress on those ceasefire talks that are ongoing. We understand that as a result, or following Hamas's counter to an initial proposal, Israel is now going to send negotiators to Doha in Qatar to resume conversations. Now, a lot of hurdles yet to clear, a lot of things on which those 2 sides cannot get close to an agreement, but those negotiations will continue, perhaps as a result of international pressure, perhaps as a result of concessions from Hamas, maybe a bit of both, but certainly on those ceasefire talks, certainly some movement.
And then, while we're on that point of aid, Alex, has the aid from Cyprus to Gaza landed? And what is the latest regarding that situation of the humanitarian crisis as the war rages on, while also we await, of course, results from the ceasefire talks?
It's a disaster. There's no other way to put it. It is a catastrophe. It is a disaster. You hear several aid organizations, anything from the United Nations to the Norwegian Refugee Council, saying that the situation on the ground is catastrophic. We know from the United Nations that 500,000 people are on the verge of famine in Gaza. That is how high the stakes are. We also know that certain Israeli military strikes have hit people who were seeking some of this aid. So, of course, you have the efforts to get the aid from the outside to Gaza, but then distribution within Gaza remains a very, very, very serious challenge. Now, we know that first ship, that pilot program with towing a barge with 200 tons of food on board is nearing the Gaza coast, or maybe have arrived on the Gaza coast. They are still trying to build a makeshift jetty, mostly with rubble from Gaza, trying to build that jetty to unload those goods, and so that aid will start trickling in. Now, 200 tons is a lot of food, but it is nothing compared to the needs of the entire population of Gaza. You've got 1.5 million people in the city of Rafah, 500,000 people in central Gaza, 300,000 people in the very badly affected northern part of the Gaza Strip. So certainly that humanitarian catastrophe is certainly ongoing, but that aid is now going to flow in much faster by sea. It will continue to airdrop, of course, by air. And those checkpoints, those crucial road checkpoints, we may see more aid coming through those in the next few days as well.
All right, thank you for that update. Alex Cardier, the SABC News correspondent.